wondering if I can even do it on my end. But yeah, you should just be able to click the like video camera icon.
Sorry, I'm not the most tech savvy.
That's okay. You can just leave it on, and if it's displaying on top of your PowerPoint for the participants, you can just drag that off to the side.
Okay. All right. So I think I just turned it off. Is it good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you everyone again for your time. I'm going to go over a little bit of just about e-cigarettes, vaping, some of the issues that we're seeing here in Utah, information that I've received from the Utah Department of Health, the CDC, as well as some of our state legislatures and some of the bills that they're proposing to address this issue. I'm just going to do an overview of what this looks like, things we are seeing from law enforcement and public health officials, and then we'll dig in deeper to a little bit about what the legislative actions are to be passed in 2020 with high hopes, and then kind of talk about possible solutions and or other things to notice since this is a very multifaceted issue. Okay, so what is happening? So what is happening from public health standpoint, what is happening with our national representation. Some of you may have seen like Senator Mitt Romney in the news at the White House discussing this with the CDC, FDA, as well as the president in regards to some of the changes that we need to do on a federal scale, and then what's happening from a local perspective. So some of the questions or some of the agenda items that I'll go over within this presentation is, what can we do on a policy level to reduce this burden of vaping? As many of you know, when we talk about these public health issues, it's not just an issue of law enforcement. It's a conjunction of public health initiatives and behavior change, and some of it is actually also incorporating those who sell, so like retailers of vapes, and how we can address all of those areas to help reduce this problem. And then and again, just what we need to be doing on an education level, on a health promotions level to influence this behavior change. And I'll go over some of these stats, but as some of you know, the target audience for these products are really young. And those who are engaging in vaping behaviors are very, very young. And so how are we going to influence this behavior change, and how are we going to change the perceived risk that some of our youth may or may not have in regards to vaping? And then I also want to mention too that, we've seen this outbreak with vaping, and it's confusing in my opinion. And I think the media kind of jumped on the wagon a little too soon without clarifying what's going on. So there's an issue between vaping that is called like illicit vaping. So when we can go to the 7-Eleven and purchase a Juul, then we have vaping for youth, which is technically against the law if they're vaping underage, which I think the current age is 19 to be able to purchase and use one. And then we have a whole issue on illicit vaping, which has contributed to some of these outbreaks that we've seen. And as I'm going through this presentation, if any of you have any questions or feedback, I know it's a little different since we're not in person, but please feel free to interject so that I can clarify anything that may be confusing. So as we are thinking about this problem from a public health standpoint, a question for youth is in this little picture we have. So it's like, why do you think people your age are using e-cigs and vapes? Because as we go through this information, I think as we swim upstream and we try to look for upstream interventions, asking why is critical to get this from a multifaceted angle. And additionally, why are adults using e-cigs and vapes? Often we see, and I think most of us can attest to the fact that some of us will be driving down the highway or on the street, and we see this big smoke of cloud coming out of cars, and so this person is 16 years old plus using the vapes, and so just kind of towards our adult audiences. It's a very normalized behavior. I've been in public and you see people vaping, they have them with them all the time. And so not only why are children using them, but why are adults using them as well? Some stats. So according to the CDC, 3.6 middle school and high school students used e-cigarettes in 2018. And so that's one of the sharpest rise for any substance use in the last 44-year history regarding this age bracket. Nicotine is highly addictive. It can be as addictive as a cocaine and alcohol. And when we talk about substances that are used amongst the United States, nicotine is used more than any other drug. So about the outbreak. So we've seen just within this last year, this outbreak of vapes or of people going to the hospital because of vape usage. And so this is where I said I think the media was a little confusing because it almost was framed as if it was the vapes that were coming from the smoke shops. Those have been around for a couple of years. So a lot of people have been asking me personally, well, vaping's been around, yet we have not seen any outbreaks in regards to this until recently. And so that's where that illicit market comes in, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But there's been, since November 13, 2,172 cases of e-cigarettes or vaping that are associated with like a lung injury. And then it's reported that it's happened in all 49 states. There's been a total of 42 deaths confirmed. And so these are investigations happening by the CDC. Utah had one confirmed death not that long ago, and so the Utah Department of Health invited the CDC to come and do an investigation to see what was causing these hospitalizations. So as they did an analysis of the lungs of those who were being sent to the emergency room, and when they did the autopsy and some investigations on the person who died here in Utah, he was a victim of what's been happening for the other deaths across the country, which is having these vapes being infiltrated with vitamin E acetate. So I did have a discussion with the Utah Department of Health from the labs, and they're trying to determine if it was strictly the acetate that was causing the induced hospitalizations or if it was just vitamin E as a whole. But nonetheless, vitamin E acetates were found in all samples, and of those samples that they confiscated, THC was identified in 82% of them, and nicotine was also identified in 62% of the samples. When they did the biological test on the lungs, it was, I can't remember, it was like they had like mucous membranes on them. It was something that they have never seen because it was like a biological specimen. Like it might have, from what I remember, it was like a bacteria from the vitamin E acetate, because that's not something that you inhale. And within this cartridge, if you take a look at the bottom, there's an atomizer, which helps. Actually, this next photo will show here. So you have vape and e-cigarette, just as a comparative. You have the mouthpiece, the refillable tank, the built-in atomizer, which helps heat the oil, on and off switch, and a battery. So that atomizer helps heat the oil, right? And so when people were putting vitamin E acetate in that oil, because it was an open system, which means that mouthpiece could be taken off, somebody was taking vitamin E acetate, putting it in there as a way to cut the product, and then it was heated and ingested like smoke. It caused those lung bacterial issues. And so again, going back to the stats of 82% of them were linked back to THC cartridges, which is a separate issue of the vaping that we are seeing, or the uprise in vaping for most students, which is just like the Juuls or like the, not the e-cigarette, but the vape. So I guess let me clarify. So this picture of this vape, this could be the structure of this on the photo. This could be used for nicotine only, but there are similar THC cartridges that look just like this that have a removable oil piece, so that refillable tank is removable with the mouthpiece, and so that also kind of makes the issue confusing because the body in which they are administered are quite similar. As an overview, just the differences between e-cigarette and vape, you kind of saw visually. E-cigs are the common name for e-cigarettes. Vapes, vaporizers, different names. Let's see. I mean, I don't want to read all of this to you, but basically that just can kind of give you a comparison of what these look like. Types of vapes, and again, I'm sure you're all very well versed in what this is and what they look like. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and I believe these ones are strictly used for nicotine. Although, as the markets for those who create the THC cartridges, they are just as innovative and tend to replicate the bodies or like the form of these as a means to keep it in anonymity, because it is illegal in this state. We'll go over that. The actual definition of vaping and e-cigarettes is really important, and the reason, and so I took this from the CDC. So vaping is the act of inhaling and exhaling aerosol, often referred to as vapor, which is produced by an e-cigarette or similar device. The term is used because e-cigarettes do not produce tobacco, smoke, but rather aerosol, often mistaken for water vapor, that actually consists of fine particles. Many of these particles contain varying amounts of toxic chemicals, which can be linked to cancer, as well as respiratory and heat. Let's see. So with that, and the reason why that definition is so important, because as I was trying to get more information on this vaping outbreak that we had here in Utah, I wanted to call some federal agents. And so it's called the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They're called ATF agents. So similar to where I work, like with the DEA agent, there's a whole different sector in the federal government called ATF. So I gave this gentleman a call, and I asked, I'm like, well, what are we doing about the vape situation? And he said that we do not see or deal with any cases of e-cigarettes or vaping because it is, by definition, not a tobacco product. It is a liquid nicotine mixed with other chemicals. So in Utah, so that's a federal level. In Utah, on the state level, we do define e-cigarettes as a tobacco product. So that is in our favor, as we are trying to legislate this and make it more comprehensive, that those definitions are the same. But as we can see, there is discrepancy in how we define this from a federal level opposed to the state level, which we'll talk about why that can be confusing as we're trying to reduce these issues and talk about comprehensive legislation. So overall, some of the issues is just we're not using common language. Vape could literally signify vaping tobacco, or excuse me, vaping nicotine, or it could mean vaping THC. One of the issues that I have seen is that a lot of people don't perceive vaping as a risky behavior. And when we don't perceive something as risky, it creates the probability of us potentially using it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to, but if we increase that possibility and have low perceived risk, it may constitute why we're seeing 3.6 million middle school and high school students engaging in vapes. I didn't verify this stat, but I also saw that 1 in 3 youth have tried vapes. And again, I think that goes back to that perceived risk. And especially too, because when we talk about, like just in that definition and in the previous slide, how it said that often those clouds are mistaken for water vapor. Again, it's reducing that perceived risk because we're not identifying it as chemicals and fine particles. These, and as you know, these vapes, in comparison to like cigarettes, for example, or in comparison to like smoking a marijuana joint, when we're talking about the THC portion of it, these can be used in anonymity. And again, I think that is an opportunity for increased use, because as many of you know, you could have a Juul, and I think it's on the next slide, it's very small, it's ambiguous. You plug it into your computer to charge, it looks like a USB, and you could quite literally use it without being detected because it is odorless. Essentially, you could limit the amount of smoke coming out of it. And so a lot of schools that I have engaged with have told me their top problem is vaping within the schools, and particularly within the bathrooms of schools. So because of its nature, and so in comparison to like a cigarette, for example, for somebody to smoke a cigarette, they have to make the decision to walk outside, light it up, it smells, there's stigma. Cigarettes have a buzzword to them. When you're using a vape, there is no buzzword because we don't look at it as a behavior that we should be entirely concerned about. So as we are going through some of this legislation on the Hill because of these outbreaks, these are some of the proposed legislative bills for 2020. And looks like I forgot the O at the end of 2020. My apologies. So I don't know if I really need to read them off to you, as you can read them yourselves, but maybe I'll just do a brief summary of each one. So joint resolution encouraging local health departments to set licensing rules. You can see who the sponsors are, and then it's basically to cap the amount of sales that they're doing per their geographical jurisdiction. So again, these are all bills that are being proposed for the legislative session next year. And so I also would encourage you, if you're taking a look at some of these and you feel that you could have more input or what have you, I would also see if you could somehow contact some of these representatives or senators if you have some feedback that you would like. So tobacco to 21, currently I think to purchase tobacco, including e-cigarettes, you have to be 19 years old. Nationwide, it's 18 years old. So we do have a more conservative rule or regulation in regards to that, but it looks like we may even be pushing it to 21 years old. And then within that description of the bill, it will also clean up some definitions, and it will help reduce underage sales and getting rid of exemptions, like I think military and their family. So I'm not quite sure if that means the military has certain exemptions from this, but nonetheless, they are able to put that restriction there. And then we have a couple tobacco retailer amendments. Basically, one, trying to institute more evidence-based policies. There's another one. So there are different tobacco sellers who have a specialty license. Or I should say that when you become somebody who wants to sell tobacco, you have to have a specialty license for that. And it would better define what that looks like. I think that some of the definitions are ambiguous, and so sometimes that's why you see different stores being able to sell vapes, like a coffee shop, for example. There's one just down the street from where I work. They're selling vapes and cigarettes and whatnot, and it will put a clear line as to what a tobacco retailer looks like, so that we're not increasing the sale of these products. It also looks like they will implement a one strike you're out policy if you are caught selling to a minor. So putting more restrictive opportunity or more restrictive regulation there. Looks like so for the Youth Substance Abuse Prevention Committee, it looks like we would also allocate about $2 million for statewide education programs, which is excellent. I think that would help benefit some of our local health departments, especially one like yourself, to help reduce this burden. The vaping prohibition, which is just outright vaping on all products. And so some people often say that will never pass because you are getting rid of people's civil liberty to smoke if they want to. But I think from what I understood and from some of the dialogues that we've had in different circles, getting rid of vaping as a whole will then, because of how extreme it is, it will help push some of these other bills who do not look as extreme in order to get some good, or maybe, I shouldn't say good, but in order to get some more legislation passed. So the retail tobacco specialty business amendments, which is just restricting all flavored tobacco products to, and they were in the sense of being sold. So for example, you couldn't go to, so the coffee shop that I mentioned earlier, who is selling all types of vapes and cigarettes, from what I understand, it's not a specialty tobacco specialty business because it does have another purpose. So their ability to sell flavored vape would be taken away from them. Whereas now if you go into a tobacco store, if they get the specialty license, I think they are still able to sell the flavored ones. But the overall push for this is, as we know, when you are selling things that are strawberry flavored or Sour Patch flavored or what have you, it decreases that danger because they're trying to associate it with other flavors and other things that we consume in our lifestyles. So that's been a big push. I believe that was pushed last year and it wasn't passed. So hopefully with this amendment, it will move forward. Electronic cigarettes, so and when I say e-cigs, it's also including vaping, because we are seeing such an uprise of this within schools. This bill will allow for schools to confiscate the product, the vaping mechanism, and they're able to destroy it. And then they're going to set aside funding for after-school programs to keep kids engaged with peers in positive environments. Currently, as I have explored the different school districts and their policies on what they are doing with vaping, it's not unanimous, and I don't know if there's pros or cons to that, but some schools take it way more seriously than others, and some administrative teams are trying to be more restorative, trying to use opportunities of when this is confiscated to do more like restorative education. Some are throwing penalties on parents, and so there is some discussion about what that looks like, but I think that gets tricky, and I think that gets tricky when we're trying to regulate this issue amongst youth. If it's not uniformed and it's different things are happening in different areas, it's hard to tell what's most effective versus not. But then again, maybe it is because we have different ideas, different solutions, and then maybe later down the road we're able to get a better idea of what those consequences or what are those results of that. Electronic cigarette and other nicotine product amendment. So it looks like there is a 0.086 tax on e-cigarettes. And there was some because I took these descriptions and kind of edited them out. There was some discussion that this is a little bit confusing still and still needs to have some better verbiage about what this e-cigarette tax is going to look like. I don't know if they are going to increase it or decrease it, but that is still pending. And then it would also, I think it may be saying that you're going to use this tax to set aside up at least $2 million to the Department of Health, and LHD stands for Local Health Department, on increased enforcement and prevention strategies. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so if not, then I'll go ahead and move on. So federal action. Because we saw the 2,000 plus outbreaks, which were causing hospitalizations across the nation, and we've had 42 deaths within a short amount of time, this has got federal attention. So I took a screenshot of a Salt Lake Tribune article in regards to what's happening on a federal level. It looks like our national representative, Senator Mitt Romney, he has been very vocal about his opinions on e-cigarettes as a whole. He's very concerned, and the reason why I showed you this picture is so if you want to look up the article, you can get a more in-depth analysis of what this is going to look like. But he was encouraging to get rid of all flavoring of vapes, and he proposed it to the FDA. There are some issues with this, just because, or I'm sorry, excuse me. I believe that so it's getting rid of all vaping as a whole, but then there is some backlash to that because it does provide jobs, it is a source of income and part of the economy, and so there's been backlash towards that. So then it looks like he has been changing his stance a little bit and is just hoping to get rid of all flavored vaping, and then to increase the age to 21. Now, some of the support has also been backed by the president, but again, when you get some of the backlash when we are discussing some of the financial ramifications of that, it gets tricky. This article right here came from late November, I believe November 22nd, and I didn't find anything else that updated that. So I may take it upon myself to contact the senator's office to see if there's any sort of update on this stance and where we're looking. But I know that from Utah, especially, our senator has been very vocal about this issue. So as I got some of this information in regards to what we're doing about illicit vaping, so vaping where we are purchasing our tobacco products from a legal vendor, there's not legislation in regards to the illicit market, and understandably so, because it's in Utah, the use of THC products is still illegal, and so it doesn't come off as this is something as an important agenda item, because if it's illegal, then it's illegal, right? However, we do, and from like this DEA perspective, we are seeing an influx in the usage and importation of THC cartridges in our state. If you were to go online and you were to search THC carts Utah, you can see that some people have been under investigation for this and have been arrested because they have been selling these. And just so you know, this is a picture of what they look like. As you can see, that vape body is very similar to the other vapes that you can use in a legal fashion. And as we mentioned too, some of these hospitalizations are due to THC laced with vitamin E acetate. And people often ask, well, why are they doing that? So when we look at the black market and we look at products, we look at the way in which these systems work, we want guaranteed customers. We want to utilize our products. So if we are able to use less and distribute more, we make more money. When I say we, I'm taking that from the stance of the vendor. So if we are targeting, so say I'm Juul and I am targeting, I'm using flavors to kind of desensitize the use of the Juul, and then it's going to help bring in a younger market because they're not viewing this as a risky behavior. They're associating it with strawberry and Sour Patch Kids. That's when they are a guaranteed customer, because the nicotine is addictive and it's hard to get off of, and it's not as much of a buzzword as something like an opioid use disorder. So not that big of a deal. I'm just going to vape. But little do they know they're building an addiction as they are using the nicotine. So the same kind of goes for the THC cartridges. Those who are making and selling these, they are tokenizing the same concept of using Sour Patch Kids and Runts as the flavor for the THC. They're essentially odorless, so they can be used in anonymity, very different from conventional pot use, which is a marijuana joint that creates a really large odor and you have to do it in secrecy. That's no longer the case. And the same form of this is the way it looks for most of these can still be a legal product. And so it gets really confusing for law enforcement if they are, going through somebody's things and they see all of these cartridges. They have no way to identify what's legal versus what's not legal. And I don't know how many people are actually using the time and resources to send, a couple of vapes here and there to the lab to test that. However, we are seeing large shipments in different areas across the states, including Utah, of these THC cartridges, which is concerning. And I also would like to mention, too, that with these THC cartridges, a normal marijuana joint is anywhere from 4 to 9% THC. These carts can be anywhere from 40 to 90% THC. And as we know, THC is a psychoactive drug. And so when youth are now having more of an accessibility to them, and I'll talk about what we have seen here in Utah, and they're smoking 40 to 90% of a psychoactive THC product, it is concerning. let's see. So within this market too, because as I mentioned, Utah, we don't have marijuana, or we don't have THC usage recreationally. There are two types of THC carts that are being distributed. We have the ones that are coming from actual dispensaries, like in Nevada, California, Colorado, or surrounding states. Those are a regulated product. So they are quote unquote bit safer because there is some regulatory laws that they have to abide by as they are using them. Now, once it hits the Utah border, it's an illegal substance, so illegal is illegal. But then we have those who are, I don't know if they are purchasing those or if they're assembling them themselves, who are then bringing them here and then cutting them with who knows what, not making it a controlled or a regulated substance. And I think that's what's also attributing to the outbreaks that we've seen. Either way, the THC cartridges are still considered a black market material, but there is just two different types of black market material that we are seeing. This is one example. I would also, mention too, because of you can use these in anonymity, and they're just, they're very low key. When we think of those who push, sell, and make drugs, they are looking for the next trend, the next innovative way to increase the use of these. And so that's part of the big push for this, and that's why we are seeing 15,000 THC vape cartridges being seized in different, well, this one specifically in Cleveland, but we are seeing an uprise of this happening in different areas across the country, including Utah. And we don't know if they're regulated or not. And so this makes it a kind of a difficult thing to regulate, which may be the reason why there is no concrete legislation happening on this, to my knowledge. I'm going to click on this this link. This was published by KUTV a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to hit play on the video. If you don't get the sound, please let me know, and then I'll just kind of leave it up to you to look it up. But it's called Drug Dealers Find Potential Young Customers on Snapchat via Social Media. Just a couple minutes. And so this video is actually those who are interviewed in our local. Oh, let's see, screen sharing has stopped. Sorry, one moment, please. Okay, here we go. Is the sound working for everyone?
We're not hearing the sound on this.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, yeah, I don't know if that's me, because it looks like my computer audio is connected. But anyways, if you are interested in taking a look at that, these are local students, 13 to 15 years old, who are interviewed by Jim Spewak in regards to the accessibility of these illicit products on Snapchat, and just kind of going over how easy it is to get a hold of them, which I don't think vaping, like the nicotine, I don't particularly know how much is happening on Snapchat. Could be very possible, but nonetheless, just another increased point of accessibility as, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try and pull up the PowerPoint. I just had one more slide. I don't know if that's going to. Sorry, one second. If I don't know if I'm going to be able to share it, because it looks like it exited out of that. Well, nonetheless, I'll conclude here. I know that you kind of wanted a legislative overview of what that's looking like, so hopefully I was able to provide some of the local legislation that's happening, which is quite a bit in my opinion, which is good. We're having our representatives be active on this issue. We have some federal attention to this as well. We do still have the issue of, well, I should say, so we're focusing more on a retail specific legislation, which is really important. It looks like there is some opportunity to have some funding come to local jurisdictions like yourselves who may be able to get some funding for more education. But overall, I would say that all of this is really important. It is a very good starting point, although I don't think it's the end. Going back to the first question within my slide, why are adults using vapes, is going to help us be a little more upstream. You know, there's a multitude of reasons as to why, and I think as we potentially will get these $2 million+ to be more in our public health efforts and our mental health efforts, I think that there should be more discussion as to why to prevent the behavior happening from the first place, and then potential. In my opinion, I think that charging parents $300 because their kid came to school with a vape is not comprehensive. It especially doesn't help students who are of low income, because it's just putting another burden on families, but rather an educational restorative component to this, I think is more worthwhile in investing our time and our money. And hopefully, as we try to figure out the reasons as to why youth are using nicotine, like Juuls, and why they are using products like THC cartridges, it may help us better understand how we can navigate that. I would also just argue, on top of the perceived risk, again, it doesn't mean every student is like this, but I have seen a lot of feedback where youth do not view that they call them carts. So the carts, they don't view the THC carts as that big of a deal. And I've seen it on multiple occasions where youth as young as 13 years old are getting access to these carts via another family member or through Snapchat or what have you. And they don't think that using a little bit is that big of a deal. And I've also seen in anonymous feedback that they are using it as a coping mechanism for anxiety, because they believe that that THC products can help reduce anxiety. So something to keep on the forefront, although I'm sure you all are very well aware of this information. If you have any questions, happy to open that now. Otherwise, if you're thinking of other initiatives or any other things that you would like to do or collaborate on, I am more than open, as this is something that I am very passionate about and would like to help wherever I can and help support already sustaining initiatives.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions pop up. If you do have questions, you can unmute yourself or feel free to just type into the chat box. Thank you so much, Sierra. That was an awesome overview. It's good to kind of get a sense of what's coming down the pipeline. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite. Seriously, I was very happy to do it.
Great. In our chat box, we got another thank you. So just wanted to pass that along if you didn't see it. So we will go ahead and turn the time to, oh, did you have something else?
Oh, nope. I was just going to say thank you. And again, please feel free to forward along my contact info. I have to head to another meeting, so I'm actually going to log off, but I would be more than happy to speak with you afterwards if you'd like. And thank you all for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Oh, what just happened?
Okay, so Teresa, we will now turn the time to you. If you want to share your screen and unmute yourself, you can go ahead and start sharing your part.
Okay. Let's see. Oops, not that screen. Michelle, I didn't, let's see. Do you want me to share the document that I sent to you?
Yeah, if you want to just put that up and share your screen so we can kind of take a look at it while you're talking about it.
Okay, let me just pull that. I didn't realize I was going to be sharing that, so I will need to find that. Anyway, they were talking about last year, you know, how you guys ended up doing a thank you to all of your coalition members for being part of the coalition and helping with the goals and objectives. And one of the things that Michelle brought up is we need to find other ways to show our gratitude for those volunteers. And so one of the things that we've done in our county is to thank the agencies or the key leaders that allow us to access resources specifically by way of personnel. And so we sent them a letter just letting them know some of the accomplishments that the coalition has achieved throughout the year, and then thanking them specifically for the individual that's in their agency or their organization, and letting them know the value that they are to the coalition and their contributions, so that they know that we appreciate them and they'll continue to be able to let us have access to their people and their resources. And I'm looking for this and I can't remember what I filed it under after. So,
That would be
oh, that's a good call. Let me pull it up. It's going to be to Michelle. And, okay. So I'm not sure how to share my screen though. Okay. So this is just a copy of the document, and I'm just going to give Logan credit, but I'm not sure. I am not very savvy with this, so I'm not sure how to share my screen, Michelle.
here. I have it pulled. There you go. Boom.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yikes. Right. Here? Right here? Okay. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is just an example that he sent to the chief of police in Washington City, thanking him for the officer that was part of the coalition. And, you know, it just kind of introduces the key leaders to some of the things that we're doing, and then specifically how their representative contributes. And then we just gave a little overall review of what was accomplished during the coalition this year. And that's basically it. Easy peasy.
Are you okay with us forwarding this out to everybody after
Yep.
the call?
You bet. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Any questions for Teresa? Okay, well, we'll move over to Rob. If you want to introduce those new parents and parent spots.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Super excited, actually, to premiere the new radio spots that actually have been running on Pandora since last week, which is really cool because I turned on Pandora and heard it like 2 days after we at the work group had given it the go-ahead. So I'm really excited. You may have heard these spot. We have a 30-second and a 60-second spot. With Sierra's presentation and her trying to show the video, I got a little bit nervous that you may not be able to hear it from my computer. And if that's the case, that's okay. I downloaded it on my phone, and I'll hold up my phone's speaker to the microphone on my laptop as a backup so that everybody will hear it. So let's see if I can do this. So I need to share my screen. And it's going to be this one.
You're not just anyone. You're a parent. A sleep-deprived, bleary-eyed warrior. That's right. You're a diaper-changing, nose-wiping, soccer coaching, snowman building, cookie frosting, friend shuttling, curfew setting, fall asleep watching TV parent. And nobody makes a grilled cheese quite like you. Like most parents, you spent your life helping your kids reach their full potential. You do all the small things to help them have healthy brains and bright futures. Don't stop now. The best way to keep your kids' brains in tip-top shape is to make sure they stay alcohol-free. Studies show that kids are much less likely to drink underage when they know their parents would strongly disapprove. So parents, make your strong disapproval as clear as a sparkly clean window. Then you can continue all your study helping, romance advising, essay reading, and art on the fridge placing parental ways. You got this. Visit parentsempowered.org to learn more.
Okay, were you able to hear that?
We heard it.
Awesome. Let's do the 30-second one.
You're not just anyone. You're a parent. A sleep-deprived, bleary-eyed warrior. That's right. You're a diaper-changing, soccer coaching, curfew-setting, fall asleep watching TV parent. You spent your life helping your kids reach their full potential, so don't stop now. The best way to keep your kids' brains in tip-top shape is to make sure they stay alcohol-free. Studies show that kids are much less likely to drink underage when they know their parents would strongly disapprove. So parents, make your strong disapproval clear. Visit parentsempowered.org to learn more.
Awesome. That's it. I love these two spots. I'm probably as proud, if not more proud, of this radio spot than I am of any other radio spot we've ever done as long as I've been on the Parents Empowered Work Group. This is like power packed. That's my baby. Sorry. It's a power packed commercial. It's got a lot of information, but we really wanted to have a positive tone to it, and letting people know like parenting is hard. You do a lot of things as a parent, and you should be commended for that. And add to the awesome things that you do as a parent, talking to your kids about alcohol and setting clear rules and making sure that they stay away from underage drinking. So yeah, those are the commercials. I'm happy to play them again if you want me to.
Is there anywhere we can find these or share them around?
We will start passing these around. Actually, we're putting together now the 2019 media stick, and your each county coordinator will be receiving one of those, and we will be doing more for other people as well. But first stop is to go to your county coordinator. Sorry, they haven't been sent out yet, so hold on a couple of weeks for that, but that'll be part of the media stick that will include the commercials, both airing on television and radio.
Hey, awesome. Well, yeah, we'll look for that. There was a request for you to play them again, so if you could play those again, and then I have a couple more announcements. Go ahead,
Okay.
Rob.
Here's the 1 minute one.
You're not just anyone. You're a parent. A sleep-deprived, bleary-eyed warrior. That's right. You're a diaper-changing, nose-wiping, soccer coaching, snowman building, cookie frosting, friend shuttling, curfew setting, fall asleep watching TV parent. And nobody makes a grilled cheese quite like you. Like most parents, you spent your life helping your kids reach their full potential. You do all the small things to help them have healthy brains and bright futures. Don't stop now. The best way to keep your kids' brains in tip-top shape is to make sure they stay alcohol-free. Studies show that kids are much less likely to drink underage when they know their parents would strongly disapprove. So parents, make your strong disapproval as clear as a sparkly clean window. Then you can continue all your study helping, romance advising, essay reading, and art on the fridge placing parental ways. You got this. Visit parentsempowered.org to learn more.
And the 30.
You're not just anyone. You're a parent. A sleep-deprived, bleary-eyed warrior. That's right. You're a diaper-changing, soccer-coaching, curfew-setting, fall-asleep watching TV parent. You spent your life helping your kids reach their full potential, so don't stop now. The best way to keep your kids' brains in tip-top shape is to make sure they stay alcohol-free. Studies show that kids are much less likely to drink underage when they know their parents would strongly disapprove. So parents, make your strong disapproval clear. Visit parentsempowered.org to learn more.
Cool. And happy I am to announce, sorry, that was kind of Yoda. I watched Star Wars, The Last Jedi last night because I'm going to go on Friday to see the new Star Wars. So maybe that was in my head that way. But there are 2 more radio commercials to be produced. And in talking with the people that are in our partners, we are happy to premiere them in upcoming webinars. So stay tuned for those. Thanks. That was my son.
Well,
All right.
thank you,
Myself.
Robert's son. And jealous you're going to go see Star Wars. So thank you everyone for participating and listening. Just a couple more announcements. We have the Bryce Canyon Summit coming up next summer and the Snow College Summit for Youth coming up next summer. And we have some openings on the committees for both of those. Snow College hasn't been handled by UPCA before, so this will be the first year for that coming out of UPCA, but some of the people who've been on the committees before will hopefully still be involved, so it shouldn't be too much new stuff, but we definitely could use a few more volunteers. So if you're interested, you can type in the chat box or just shoot me an email and let me know. And then are there any more questions before we adjourn for today? Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you have happy holidays, stay safe, and we will talk to you again in January.
Oh, we got poops again, don't we? We got poops.